Those who have joined the call, welcome. Let us give ourselves the bandhan, raise our kundalini and meditate. And in our Sahasrara and in our hearts, let's invite Shri Mataji to this call and request her to preside over it. For those of you who may have joined just now, you hear a silence only because everybody is in meditation. So let's continue to do that for a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Just allowing more people to join. That's all. We have about 36 participants. Let's see. Okay, Jai Shri Mataji, everybody. Let's get started. Welcome, and thank you for spending some time this morning going through and attending this conference call that we have a desire to hold every 3 or 4 months so as to share a number of ongoing activities vis-a-vis the National Council and the collective in general. So we have a pretty packed agenda, and we aspire to finish around 10:30 Pacific time, 1:30 Eastern time. So the agenda, basically, you may have seen is I would like to provide as to an overview as to what are the call objectives today. We'll then provide an overview of the VND finances, which is basically a documentation of the contributions that the US collective is making to the central fund as well as to various projects. We shall then have a presentation on internet-based initiatives, and what we intend to present here are certain initiatives related to the existing infrastructure upgrades that we may wish to have, particularly in light of the 2020 Maha Sahasrara Day event that's coming up, the 50 years of the opening of the Sahasrara, and what it is that we are trying to do so as to prepare ourselves better, at least vis-a-vis the infrastructure. So we'll have a presentation on that. Thereafter, we will present the school expansion survey results and what are the proposed next steps. We have received a number of questions, and we hope that the survey results and the next steps that the National Council is proposing will help to resolve most of those questions. And then finally, the most important topic, as far as all of us, I'm sure, will agree, are the 50th anniversary celebrations of the opening of the Sahasrara, and what are the preliminary ideas that we may have in this regard. And following that, we'll have a quick Q&A. So that is what the agenda looks like. We would like to go through the formal presentations relatively quickly if we can. Not to rush through it, but to allow adequate time also later on for Q&A as it comes up. And we have, as I said, we have already received a number of questions. And with that, once again, let me then invite Meenakshi, who is a Chief Financial Officer, to start with her presentation on VND's finances. So over to you, Meenakshi.
Jai Shri Mataji, thank you, Bhaiya. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jai Shri Mataji, everyone. I just want to start with the basic thing that the VND finance accounting is on cash basis. That means that we don't accrue for our expenses. Like if we received an invoice, but we haven't paid for it, we don't account for it till the time we don't pay the cash. Same for donations, we don't record the pledges or anything. So it's on a cash basis. Today, these slides represent the numbers or include the numbers from July 1st, 2019 to October 31st, 2019. So basically these numbers just represent the 4th month finance report for a VND. Just want to give a general idea, how do we generate funds for VND. These are the general donations, are the unrestricted donations by yogis and yoginis. We received donations via corporate matching. Some people, through their payroll, they get deduct on every payroll check, and then they contribute to VND, and then they get some corporate matching to that account. So that's how we receive. Right now we have 2 platforms, Benevity and Easy Match. Some people just directly do it through their organization, which is not like a big platform. That's how we receive money. We on a regular basis or as a need, we roll out I'm sorry, I got a message that we are seeing 2 slides. Can we see it now?
Much better.
think. Okay. So we roll out different projects, and then yogis, they contribute to those projects. Like we had a Kanajari land development project going on. So people donate for those projects. When we conduct pujas and seminars, there are some proceeds that we receive through a registration or other, and then there's a surplus on that. So that's how we uh, get fund for a VND. We use those funds for our operational expenses, like paying for insurance for all the um, local collectives that we have, if we like a general liability, or if we have a centers for those, and then for VND properties that VND, it's on VND name. We pay for rent and utilities, real estate taxes, those are like a property taxes. um, Central VND has also committed to give some amount every month to Nirmal Intellectual Property Corporation that goes from Central VND. So that's like a monthly commitment every month. We also pay for our professional fees like legal or accounting. As uh, recently we submitted our tax returns for 2018, 990 tax returns for not-for-profit organization. We recently submitted this. So different kind of accounting expenses goes through the central VND account. We also support CJ land maintenance and operation accounts. The money comes out from central VND for the different regular expenses for maintenance of CJ land. And then for specific project like a land development, there's a different account, and the expenses, whatever incurred on a land development account, goes out from that. So like that's just an example of one of the project that how we spend money on these projects. Going next to this next slide, these are the summary from July 1st to October 31st. It just summarizes how much revenue we have generated, or how much funds we have generated those 4 months, and where we had spent that money. So approximately the donations from all the sources that I had described earlier, we received approximately like 415,000, which includes all the local collectives, and then the land development donations, CJ for a school operation, for a school project, if somebody has donated, or Shimadaji's house, or for central VND, it includes all the donations. These donation doesn't include the school operations revenue or expenses. This slide doesn't include that. That's a separate itself. It's a project, or you can say a cost center. So that's not been included because that money is not considered as a contribution which is coming to VND. That's just used for school operation expenses. We had different events like intermediate seminar, we had international puja, and then the local puja at CJ land. So from those events, and then we had a academy, the art events. So from those events, we generated a surplus of 70,000. To talk about expenses, out of this 415K, we spent around 396,000 to meet our operating expenses and the other development expenses or operation expenses. We paid for $27,000 for Srimadaji's house project. The project is completed, but still there was some pending invoices which were supposed to be paid. So those expenses are related to that. On CJ land development, in last 4 months, we spent 35,000. CJ land operations spent 15,000. Central fund, which includes the expenses, as I mentioned earlier, about the property taxes, legal and accounting, and PIC. So we spent 40,000 over there. On the school expansion project, again, those were relating to the well drilling or uh, getting the report for water. So we spent 12,000 over there. Remaining 267,000 is the cost for activity at the local level, um, which at a local center they spend on from their respective bank accounts, which they had for their maybe for the rent expenses, to get the room for a new seekers, or the other expenses that we had. This last slides, not the last, but the second last slide, it shows all the cash flow activities for all the 33 accounts that we have. Uh, these accounts are just sorted out by the largest balance in the account. So first account we have a Shri Kubera fund, which is like a permanently, it's not a temporary restricted account which we use just for a new centers or to spread the hedge work. So the change in net cash, we can say it's just $93. That's just an interest on that CD. So same way, if we go to next one for the Puja account, we see a 74,000 change net cash over there, which is a change. And for central VND, which is 7 or 8 account, we have a like we spend more than that we receive the donations. So it's like we spend, so there's a negative like outflow, cash outflow is of 18,600. It's just this slide is just give an idea of the cash flow and inflow in the organization. I'm not going to each and every account because it's just local. If anybody needs more detail about their local accounts, please contact your local council or local account managers to give a fair idea. Going to a next slide. On this platform, I would like to make an appeal or to encourage people that, as we know or I explained, that for central VND who actually work as a central fund or a national VND account, bank account, from where we spend for so many different things, projects, which helps to sustain the whole organization, and then also help the local collectives whenever they need the funds. So I would like to make an appeal here, if we can generate, if we can donate to central VND, because every time we get distracted, we try to support our local collectives or the projects that rolled out every year, but somehow we just put central VND as a second or a third, like we push it back, we don't donate over there. So we just like to say it's a year end, and then it's like if you have an annual giving or a Thanksgiving time or Christmas time you would like to donate, please consider to donate to central VND, who support so many things. We pay for different items and to organization. There is also Amazon Smile. If you buy, like festive time is coming, we buy so many gifts or things. So if we can use Amazon Smile, there's a little percentage that we get to a central VND or to a VND as organization. So that would be good. There are also corporate matching in a different organization. Please go and check if they have such kind of a program where you can enroll into it and then benefits, like it's like a double bonus kind of thing. You are donating your money to the organization and then also get the corporate matching for that. From past 2 years, we are participating in a Facebook Giving Tuesday. So this year it's on December 3rd, 2019. Please look out for that and donate. I believe Facebook match up to 100,000 for each not-for-profit organizations. So that's a good way to get a donation or a funds for an organization. That's all from my side. Thank you so much for listening to it. If you have any question, we can take the questions in the Q&A section.
Thank you. Thanks, Meenakshi. There was just one question from Mark, which was responded to by Nirmal. So I'm hoping that that satisfies. When we get to the Q&A, if there are further questions, we can certainly tackle them. And again, thank you for a very clear, straightforward presentation. The feedback that we would certainly like to have, particularly on finances, because this is where it's a very sensitive question. If the collective, that is, whoever attends these calls, and there is a recording, but don't know how many actually see them, but the National Council would certainly like to get a feedback if this is of use, because such a endeavor was never attempted before. Did not get regular updates from a previous National Council. So we are trying to bring that level of transparency and clarity vis-a-vis expenses, sorry, income as well as expenses. So if this is useful, then please let us know. And that would be highly appreciated, because if it is not useful, because it takes a lot of effort on, say, the finance team's part to prepare this presentation, although it looks like just 4 slides, a lot of activity and effort is involved in actually creating such a presentation. So do let us know if you find this useful. Otherwise, we can sort of think of foregoing it. But just to make sure that yogis do spend time creating this kind of a document and presenting it.
And
So
also, I just would like to add to the feedback point. If you feel that this format is not making sense, or you want to get more information about finances, if you have that kind of feedback, please let us know. We cannot provide the feedback or provide the presentation on a local basis, but whatever the main accounts that we have, we can definitely provide information around that.
perfect. Thank you, Meenakshi. So let's move on. The next topic on the agenda are the internet-based initiatives. So over to you, Raghu and Nirmal.
Okay. Thank you. I hope you can hear me and see my screen as well.
Yep. If you want to go into presentation mode, Nirmal. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. So we will be spending a few minutes talking about our plans around our internet infrastructure that we have, various websites and initiatives related to our public presence as far as spreading Sahaja Yoga. So we will be describing this in the form of 2 projects. One project is more external facing, and the other one is more internal facing, in the sense it is for the collective. And so on these slides, you'll see 2 different colored fonts used. The green one is the external facing project. The blue one is the internal facing. So we first thought we'll begin by describing the challenges we are facing on these 2 fronts. From an external standpoint, our main website is sahajayoga.org. That's still widely used as just based on the domain name. It is kind of our flagship website, and used by a resource, linked in many places, and worldwide is seen as a landing place for finding out about Sahaja Yoga. As we all know, if you've been to the website in the recent past, the information, the content, the technology being used is quite outdated. It was designed almost 2 decades ago, so that is understandable, but there hasn't been any effort to really update it. It doesn't provide much value to seekers or to yogis. There is obviously good information there, but I think we can all agree that it deserves some attention and updating. One of the key things that has happened in the past 10 years or so, as far as the use of websites for spreading information, is that people use digital marketing tools where they can target and track people based on their interests. And there are tools available from many companies that help us do that. We don't exploit them in a consistent way in Sahaj, and so we would like to see if we can put together a plan that does that. From an internal standpoint, our efforts to run meetings are obviously very laudable. There are many meetings going on nationwide. We are reaching many seekers. But again, I think we could agree that there isn't really a consistent sharing of tools, of information, of content, of what has worked, what has not worked. And we would like to see if we can do something about that as well. So we expect this will be a long effort. It is not something you can start and finish. It's something that will require continuous work. But to begin with, we would like to revamp sajyoga.org in terms of updating the technology and the content to make it more suitable. I'll talk about some specifics on the next slide. The For the internal facing project, the approach would be to talk to meeting coordinators, identify socialize best practices, and try to foster a more collective approach for helping each other do better in our meetings and help grow our collective. So through the updated website, we hope we can have an improved resource for our public outreach. We plan to incorporate digital marketing tools as a part of that, so we can track and target seekers more accurately. So let me try to explain a little bit what we mean by that. So let's say if we have someone who happens to be interested in yoga or meditation, who's actively searching on the internet for these kinds of topics, this type of information is something that can be associated with that person in a kind of anonymized way and made available to us indirectly, so that let's suppose somebody within the geographical area of that seeker is running a program. We can then target an ad for that public program and make sure that we reach that seeker. So there are technical ways to make this happen. We would like to do the tracking and understand kind of overall trends and distribution of seekers, so that we can then work with yogis in local regions in order to use this framework for targeted advertising. So that is one example of a technical change that we hope to make. The others are more obvious just in terms of the design and layout of the website, and just making sure it is more mobile friendly and things of that nature. From the internal standpoint, we are working on an initiative to really define a methodical way to learn from the collective and have each meeting coordinator provide them with the information to improve their meetings. This will be kind of in two different respects. The first is attracting more seekers to the meetings, and the second is providing them with tools, techniques, what has worked, what hasn't worked, as far as making them committed Sahaja Yogis, which, as we know, that's sometimes that last mile is the largest effort. There is a lot more information in the slide deck, and we will share this with you. We have I'll just very briefly cover it. That we've done a fair amount of study on how we can go about improving our site, exploit the interest in meditation and yoga that is there in the US these days. We've also looked into things like what are the most popular websites that seekers go to, and we hope we can, to some degree anyway, try to supplant these in the public consciousness. Obviously, these come with lots of marketing dollars behind them, so that may be a challenge. But at least we should not let the seekers kind of lose out on an opportunity to become yogis because of all this noise. So I think I'll stop there. There is a lot more information here that we can send you. But if there are any questions on this, we'd be happy to take them at the end of the call.
Thank you, Nirmal and Raghu. And There are a few others who are also helping on this project, such as Sanchit, for example, from the Bay Area, who's a part of the team. So one quick thing before we move on to the next topic, the reason for the National Council to prioritize this is obvious, that in the years past or in the decades past, trying to grow Sahaj was through platforms such as posters and flyers and banners and print newspaper ads, stuff like that. I'm sure many of us on this call particularly spent a greater part of their lives postering and flyering for such programs. But that slowly is becoming a thing of the past. Social media platforms, and of course the websites of a particular organization, in this instance Sahaj, are the primary means through which you reach people. You post something on something like Nextdoor, for example, as an app, and that generates more foot traffic than maybe 50 posters that you might put in the area. So that's the reason why there is so much effort that is going to be put into this, and it all comes together slowly and but definitively as we look next year towards the Sahasrara Day. So there is a reason why the National Council is prioritizing this project, because next year again from 5th of May onwards, and Chaitanya will talk more about that, but that is kind of where we are going with this. So again, more questions will be welcome for sure, but in the meanwhile, then let's keep going. The next topic is something that sure many of you are keenly waiting and interested in knowing, are the Kanajori School Expansion Survey results. So before I hand it over to say Romina, who I would at this point in time truly acknowledge and her help in helping the National Council with the survey, and I'll let her know what exactly how it was done. But I just wanted to take a minute or two to explain, because we got a lot of comments, obviously, with vis-a-vis the school expansion survey. So the VND at the moment is in a position, and every VND before and the VND that will succeed this one will always face this dilemma in the physical absence of Srimataji, as to how should decision making be involved, or how can we proceed with decision making for projects of a national level, critically important, where a lot of emotional as well as resources of financial nature are involved. Srimataji used to make those decisions for us, and everybody complied. Moving forward, it is going to be, since 2011 has always been a challenge, is how do you estimate what is it that the collective potentially wants? And it is difficult for any council, not just this one, to come to terms as to what needs to be done, what might the collective wish to happen. And it is very difficult to have a systematic gathering of that information. The present National Council does try its level best to reach out to local coordinators and to local councils to try to get their input into matters of critical importance. But beyond that is the entire collective. So this was an attempt, and I would say a very successful attempt, and you will see why, to gather insights from the entire collective on a matter that was and that will continue to be of critical importance for the collective, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. So that is why we conducted a survey to get a sense of what it is that the collective wants. Because as I said, for a national council, it is very difficult to read a collective's mind. So with that, over to you, Romina. And once again, before you begin, a very big thank you from all of us for everything that you have done to help with this survey. Over to you. So Romina is asking, she needs to press what, 6 hash to unmute, Chaitanya?
Romina Didi, is she joined by phone or she joined by via computer?
By phone.
Okay, Rumina Didi, you just have to unmute your phone. On the call, there must be a button to unmute. Because I don't see you in the list, so I don't really know which one of the uh, numbers is you. To
She's texting me. Okay. I don't know if she's going to try to join in. Is there any way?
I'm going to unmute all, and hopefully others can quickly.
She's saying she's coming to mother's house. She says she's running. So
I have.
Hello.
Hi.
oh, hi.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you should put everybody on mute. It's too.
Hello. Hi, Didi. Can you come on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry everybody. I was across at the ashram at the ladies seminar and then there was a lot of noise too, so it's good that I came to mother's house. Thank you, Ashish, for your kind words, but you know, I think that my participation in drafting this survey was simply that technical design of the survey, and you guys did really all the work. So let me explain to everyone how the process went. First of all, on a survey design, you have to select a tool. So the VND has a G Suite, which basically has a form that allows you to use a tool for survey drafting. We went through the design of the survey for about 3 weeks with different iterations and revisions. And we were able to capture all the questions that were required in order to sense the perception, the feedback from the yogis on the expansion in terms of the budget, the school location, and the minimum amount of funding required to start building activities. In regards to data gathering, the survey link was made available to the entire US, to all the yogis in the entire US through the emails that the VND sent. And all the responses were anonymous, which means that the system basically was not able to capture who was answering either through email or names. And the survey was opened for a period of 7 days, during which 232 responses were gathered and analyzed. In terms of reporting, the survey responses were provided by me to the VND after conducting analysis. And we provided the raw format with basically all the answers as they were gathered, and also a report with some findings that were also presented in the VND call, and all the VND officers were able to ask questions. So with that, I think that that's the overview as to how the survey was designed. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let me share my desktop and all right. Presume you can see my desktop.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Romina. As everybody heard, basically the VND wanted to keep itself sort of at an arm's length vis-a-vis the actual analysis of the data, etc., was concerned. So I'll try to go through this survey results relatively quickly, not for any other reason, but except to essentially share you with what the next steps are. So as Romina said, 232 yogis kind of took part in the survey, and the survey had two or three basic components to it. One was regarding the budget that the school presented, the school in the sense that if we have to expand the project, how much it would expand the school, how much would it cost, and then based on that, we am getting a request to increase the size. Let me see. All right. Hopefully that is much better. So at the very outset, let me say that again, as the current school in Kanajwari that exists, this survey was not about that at all, or the school expansion project does not touch that particular school as it exists at the moment. This whole thing is about the expansion project, which has been ongoing for the past 10 years, and we have spent, as we clearly outlined in the background of the survey, a fair amount of dollars, and that's kind of being conservative in terms of expressing a fair amount. Actually, we spend an enormous amount of dollars for an organization whose resources are pretty limited. So with that, we are taking a look at what the results essentially said. So the survey, although it is quantitative, we would like to interpret it in a qualitative way, because that is how essentially surveys are to be read, unless and until you really want to get into into the design of a survey that has psychometric properties or is psychometrically designed. Surveys that are done, for example, healthcare states, which are actually based on very robust statistical models. Those surveys are different. But this survey is more, it is a quantitative estimation, as I said very early on, to gauge a sense of what the collective would generally like to do. So although the numbers are present, the interpretation I would request should be more qualitative in terms of gauging the mood. So most yogis, unsurprisingly, support looking for a lower budget option in Kana Johari, but there are multiple combinations there. So about half of those who were surveyed supported both, that the $3.4 million budget that was submitted by the school expansion team, but they're also open to looking for a lower budget option. And only about 18% support a lesser budget in Kanajwari or a different location. 16% supporting a budget of 3.4 million. So there are variations on the theme, and as you can see, the numbers are are put across in a decreasing fashion. So once again, one would say that that the overwhelming majority, 3 out of 4 yogis essentially support looking for a lower budget option in Kana Johari, and there are combinations of within the yogis who have responded. The other thing that we were looking for in terms of this the school was that 67%, or we could say 2/3 of yogis agree to continue development only if 75% of the 3.4 million are collected. So if you'll recall, there was a very specific question that the National Council had posed, that what do we do vis-a-vis this proposed budget, and the idea was that, can we wait, or can we delay the project, or can we examine the project once or contingent upon the fact that we have a fair amount of dollars that would be accrued, so that then we can start the actual activity. And the reason for that, we got a fair amount of, even as we were going through the process over the past 3 or 4 months, talking with the school team, is when we sign on a particular contract, the VND is on the hook for essentially those contractual obligations and the monies that become due. Then you cannot duck out of those. And for the past 10 years, that is exactly sort of what has happened. We have signed contracts and therefore we have had to pay monies because you cannot renege on a contractual obligation. So therefore, this time we felt that why don't we look at it this way? If this is the amount of money that is required, then can we examine an option whereby we continue to solicit donations from the collective to the account? And you saw the account that was presented early on by Meenakshi. It has over $400,000 in it, but we are orders of magnitude less relative to where we would need to be. But we are not saying we need the full 3.4 million. We are saying, can we at least gather a vast majority, at least, or a substantial majority of the $3.4 million budget? And the answer to that is that yes, most of the collective does seem to support that lower budget, that the continued development, if a substantial amount of monies are collected. So about 75% supported that. Whereas about the third of them say that, well, without the collection of 75% of those. So that split is about 1/3 to 2/3. We'll get to that. And then the location, which is a very important point, basically 2/3 of the collective seem to support that the school expansion should happen at Kana Johari, but they also support having it somewhere else in the US. So taking it sort of, again, thematically, what it means is that the collective has been extraordinarily, at least the respondents who participated in the survey have participated with an extraordinarily balanced point of view for the most part. They understood, which is all of you, I am saying they, but it's basically you and all of us who participated in it, saw why the VND was coming to the collective with this survey. And the responses kind of, the numbers reflect that, the sentiment behind the number seems to reflect that we understand that the school needs to be at Kana Johari, but it is also possible to have it somewhere else in the US. And historically, we know that Shri Mataji was kind of open to the idea of having the school outside of Kana Johari. In fact, for many of you, this is probably old news, but Shri Mataji actually wanted the school, if possible, to be in Mataji's house, what we call now Mataji's house, that is on Overpeck Avenue. But that did not work out because of zoning regulations, and that was conveyed to Shri Mataji, that the zoning regulations in Richfield Park would not allow for the construction of a school or to convert that residential property into a school. So that's why it was back to Kana Johari. But the fact remains that Shri Mataji actually wanted to have the school outside of Kana Johari because she said that it would be difficult for non-yogis children to attend that school, and that was her vision. And I'm taking this opportunity to mention it because you don't get these opportunities everywhere. So Shri Mataji actually looked at the school, a Sahaj school, and I will refrain from saying a Kana Johari school. Shri Mataji wanted a Sahaj school whereby children of non-yogis could attend that school, and seeing the transformation in such children relative to normal children who go to other schools, the parents of such children would be very impressed and would want to know what is leading to these changes, and therefore wanted, in fact, the school to be even open to non-Sahajogi kids. And to that extent, she said that for such individuals to attend a school in Kana Johari would be extremely impractical. You need to have the school in a more metro or a more urban area. So I'll stop talking about it for a second. We'll get to that in terms of next steps. But I wanted to quickly share with you each and every question that was responded to. So this was the first question. Keeping in mind the background provided, would you support having a school on CJ land given a potential? And yes, you can see that 62% have supported yes to have a school on CJ land even with that budget. However, when the question was posed that, could you collect, if the VND is what it is proposing, that we collect a a substantial amount of money to de-risk the exposure of Sahaj America to such a commitment. And again, as I said, the collective voted very pragmatically and in a very balanced way. 2/3 have basically said yes, that they understand that the risk to the organization can be substantial unless and until we do collect a fair amount of monies. Then the main question that we had, frankly, was, so if we want to have a school at Kanajohari, can we try to do it with a lesser budget? I know in the past we have been informed there were many other ideas as well to have a structure that probably would not cost as much, and therefore is that a possibility that we can examine? So again, there is a support, a broad support towards that idea as well. And then finally, would we want to have a school developed somewhere else? It's a bit of an even split. It kind of tends in the direction that to have the school somewhere else, with outside of the US and not necessarily in Kanajohari. Again, not being focused on numbers to say that yes, a majority support. It's not a question of a majority. It's more of understanding where the sentiments lie. What is the emotional driver that is making yogis respond in this fashion? And what it seems to suggest is that there seems to be support for a lesser budget. Maybe not an overwhelming support, but there is some support. It reflects that pragmatism that I alluded to earlier, and we are very grateful for it. And then finally, we did get a number of comments, and I think Romina did an outstanding job in terms of categorizing those comments, because it was in free text. And as many of you who are in quantitative research or maybe involved with these kinds of activities, categorizing this is always a challenging thing because it's in a free text format. But a vast majority, and in a decreasing fashion, you can see in terms of numerical decrement, it is essentially most of them related to Kanajohari location. Positive about a question that was 3.4, which was where you want to have the school, or about the budget, location, alternatives, budgets, etc., etc. So that is those are the survey results. This recording this webcast is being recorded. You can certainly listen to it if you want to and take a look at the numbers again. So where do we go from here? So first of all, on behalf of the VND, a very big thank you for having participated in the survey. The VND has some kind of a notion as to where where the collective sentiment is. And what we are proposing, therefore, as the next steps would be to form a due diligence team, which will examine options around Kanajohari, that is on Kanajohari land. I don't mean around Kanajohari, around the Kanajohari land that we own. There is another part of the land which is not adjacent to the hangar, where many of us do not go very often, but that is also property that is owned by the collective. And therefore, to examine if on Sahaj land in Kanajohari, can we look at other options that do not cost so much amount of money. And in the meanwhile, to clarify again for the third time, please continue to donate monies to the Kanajohari School Fund, because there seems to be support, again, as we said, for a lesser option, but also we are not going to stop collecting monies for towards that end. And if you have made pledges, come true on those pledges, because a pledge is a pledge. What we need is real hard cash. So that doesn't really help just to have a pledge. We have tried to clarify that before as well. So with that, I hope it clarifies as to where we want to go next. We have approached a few individuals to see if they would be interested in being a part of the due diligence team. We have not yet formalized on it, but once we formalize, we will certainly come back to you and explain. The mandate of this due diligence team would be pretty straightforward, is to examine options around Kanajohari, but also, if possible, and whether it will be one team or two teams, it still needs to be discussed. but there could be either the same team or there could be another team that could look at options outside of Kana Johari as well and come back. Again, a decision will be taken with due consultation with the collective, and we are all in this together. But once again, thank you for your responses. It greatly helps the VND in terms of moving the needle forward on a project that has been long ongoing. So with that, I believe there might be some questions that might be coming. We'll take it during question hour. But I would like to stop there and move on to the next to the next topic, which is which relates to the 2020 Sahasrara Day celebrations. And over to you, Chaitanya. I have to stop sharing, and yeah, over to you.
Yeah, Jai Shri Mataji. Thank you, Ashish Bhaiya. So next year marks a very important milestone. On 5th of May 2020, we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the opening of the Sahasrara by Shri Mataji. And also it's the beginning of Ama's self-realizations that Shri Mataji started through Sahaj in all over the world. So you must have already heard that in many parts of the world, this anniversary is being commemorated, celebrated. And similarly, we in the United States of America as well wish to contribute our best towards this effort. So on the National Council's side, we would like to propose that instead of it being a one-day celebration of 5th of May 2020, we'd like to propose a year-long celebration. So we make the year 2020 itself as the 50 years of opening of Sahasrara. So the term itself, opening of Sahasrara, probably is more of an internal facing terminology, because externally not many yogis would understand what does that mean. But we would like to come up with some terminology. Maybe it could be 50 years of Sahaj Yoga or some on similar lines. And this would also be kind of an effort that would dovetail through the digital infrastructure upgrade project. So it's very timely that the digital infrastructure upgrade, the website development project would also be going on during the similar times. So basically, whatever would come out as the outcome from this project could be used by the collective to help propagate Shri Mataji's message in America. So, basically, as I said, it would be a year-long celebration. We would encourage all local collectives to have small, big public programs all year round. It could be anything from street fairs to promoting your classes on social media or website or on some digital platforms, or it could be public programs organized in halls or anywhere else. So we leave it up to the local collectives how they would like to commemorate this anniversary. But here at the national level, we are there to support your efforts in terms of whatever help you would need. Let's say you would need digital assets, or you would need any support in terms of helping you design something on the similar lines. So we are also looking at forming possibly a media team that could help all the local collectives, because not every capacity and skill is available at the local level to take this forward. On another note, we have received an interest and a proposal from the Love America Tour organizers, who did this Love America Tour with last year. It toured multiple parts of United States, and then finally all the tour participants who came from all over the world joined us at Shri Krishna Puja in Kana Johari. So similarly, there is a proposal by the tour organizers that they would like to do something similar for next year in United States. So towards that, we would like to request all the local councils, all the local coordinators to consult with your local collectives and get back to us, if possible, by 30th of November. to the National Council that yes, we would like to host the realization tour. It might not necessarily be called as Love America Tour, considering what kind of terms we would like to use to commemorate the 50th anniversary next year. So some kind of realization tour, if you are willing to host that many number of yogis in your collective. So you know how it was done last year. So if you are interested in doing so, please get back to us, because that will help inform at the national level or the National Council of how much the interest is and how much is the appetite within the local collectives to do that. And similarly, it would be conveyed to the tour organizers that this is how the local collectives wish to do it. Also, as you know, each year there has been a Festival of Inner Peace tour that has been organized, where we have different Sahaj artists that conduct programs and tour certain cities in United States. So similarly, if you wish to host such an event, and if your local collective would like to participate, get back to us by the similar time frame of 30th of November. And so in terms of like the deadlines, these are the two programs that we wish to get the feedback from you. And then with that information, we can go forward in terms of organizing these programs. Also, as you saw that with the digital infrastructure upgrade, there would be quite a lot of assets and material that would be created through social media. There would be a digital marketing plan. So we would also again need collective support at the local level to help disseminate those assets. And once the digital infrastructure team comes up with all of that, we will keep you informed on that. Apart from that, also we would like to mention that because next year is so important, a lot of these programs would need monetary effort, monetary donations from the collective. Plus also everybody needs to volunteer to conduct public programs. So next year, the priority for the National Council and for the VND is going to be spreading Sahaj Yoga throughout the United States. And all the other priorities would be kind of secondary to that. So as much as you can at the local level, please try to put much attention on this, and also everybody kind of needs to make a promise that they would dedicate them their, not just the next year as a milestone, but just as a motivation. It kind of generates a momentum that dedicate the next year towards as much as you can to spread the message of Shrimataji in your local cities, offices, wherever you are. So with that, also one point we wanted to mention is that there are multiple collectives across the United States. There are some smaller collectives, there are some larger collectives. There are locations in America where Sahaj is not so prominently present. So we would also like to put our attention on that. We are also looking at possibility to provide some kind of funding or a seed funding, so to say, for to different local collectives from the National Fund to organize and conduct public programs in their in their areas where there might not be so much of funds available for them to do so. So with that, maybe if I missed anything, Ashish Bhai, I would like you to add to it. Thank you.
No, thanks, Chaitanya. As always, a superb job. I guess the takeaway is very obvious. Next year marks the 50th anniversary of what historically was the most milestone in human evolution. We are fortunate to be living in this period that we are actually witnessing it. Time will only tell how big an event 5th of May 1970 was. We are still examining it within the context of our own very meager lifetimes. but it will be centuries perhaps before the full import of what happened that morning on that beach in Nargol will be evident. But in this lifetime, to whatever extent we can do to further that cause for which for the divine incarnation, we know as Shri Mataji, that would be that would be extraordinarily fulfilling. And it doesn't mean that just because it's the 50th year we do more. It may be to serve as an impetus for all of us to leave behind our differences, to come together as one. We have had some disagreements, and these things happen in families over the past some years, but hopefully we can come together on this common vision that we need to move forward, and which is why many of the activities that Nirmal and Raghu enumerated and then Chaitanya spoke to about will we can help to move that forward. So thank you everybody. Now let's move on to the Q&A. We have a fair amount of time, and with that, over to you, Chaitanya, if you want to triage the questions that we have already received on the web.
Yeah. So there were also questions received on the Google form that was circulated earlier when we circulated the announcement to join today's call, or the invitation to join today's call. And some of those questions kind of have already been answered through the different presentations that have been done. And so I would not really repeat many of those, but some of them right now. Firstly, we could also look at what we received in the comments as we were doing the presentations. So there was a question from Uncle Mark Mays that most of the expenses presented by Meenakshi Didi are activities at the local level, and what would those expenses include, and which are the beneficiaries? So Meenakshi Didi, you can take that question.
Actually, that question was answered by Nirmal, Chaitanya.
Okay.
And Mark responded to it as well. So, and everybody probably could read it. So let's move on.
Okay.
I hope that's okay with Mark as well.
Yeah. So just to answer that again for everybody, if everybody didn't get a chance to read the chats, some who are joining on phone, is that at the local level expenses, though they are accounted on the VND's expenses, they are basically kind of managed by the local collectives. So if you need any information on the local expenses, that how your collective spent them, you can reach out to the finance or accounting manager at your local collective or your local council, who would have access to that information. Apart from that, we also received a question regarding the sahajmeditation.com website. Would there be an effort to update that, and is there any plan for that? To which I see a response from Nirmal Bhaiya, but Nirmal Bhaiya, if you want to kind of explain that to the others as well, it would be great. And please unmute yourself. You could do so through your phone.
Nirmal? Not working.
Nirmal Bhaiya, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the second question you're referring to, Chaitanya, was about sahajmeditation.com?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So just generally speaking, there are a lot of websites out there that we have used in the past in various materials over the years. And, we will be focusing on the new website and making sure that going forward, that is available to all yogis and available on materials that we use. And these older websites will naturally, become less relevant. At some point, we will take them down. But I would say that, as long as there's some activity going on, we will leave it there. We don't want to abruptly take it off for anyone who's still using it. But first of all, we'll wait for the new website to be created, and at that point we can kind of do an inventory and decide what happens to the older ones.
Okay. There is a question regarding, is there any survey basically of how many children are there in the United States that could potentially be attendees to a Sahat school?
No, I don't believe that such a survey has been conducted. But again, thematically, that may not be the way we want to look at this for now. Certainly not on this call to be able to respond adequately to that question. The suggestion on our part probably would be that let the due diligence team come together, and maybe they can try to answer this question. It's an ongoing question for every institution vis-a-vis its organic growth and the efforts it needs to put in to sustain it. So it's a valid question, but for now we would refrain from responding in an ad hoc fashion and would prefer to answer it maybe a little more systematically if the due diligence team, when it comes together, can address it. Hope that helps.
Okay. Another question that we have is that what's the VND's viewpoint on the Canadian school?
So let me take that. The Devi School in Canada is of course a very successfully run establishment, and we have yogis, kids from, or kid yogis or children who are yogis who attend that school, and the VND within that context supports the freedom of American parents or parents who live in the United States to send their children to whichever school they wish to send. So whether it is the ISPS in Dharamshala, whether it is the Devi School in Canada, whether it is in Europe, or of course our own Kana Johari school. And the VND a couple of years ago, not this VND, but the previous one, basically took this agnostic view to this question, because there were a lot of emotions that were running around at that time about the legitimacy of this school over that school. One school should be supported, the other should not be supported. So I would say that that at that point in time, the VND took what certainly has appeared to be a relatively wise decision, is that the VND doesn't get involved with which school a particular set of parents wants to go to. And to that end, we solicit an indemnification of the VND. And for reasons that we probably don't want to go into right now in the call, but we do get this indemnification so that the VND as an organization is not held responsible by the parent should something happen to the child if they go to one of these schools. And the reason behind that is to again de-risk the organization from any potential sort of issues that might come up if something goes wrong in some of these schools, because the VND does not have direct oversight on any of the schools except, of course, the Kana Johari school. So for schools that are ex-US, it is impossible to have a view with regard to whether or not American parents should send their kids there. So that's the VND's point of view. I hope that helps.
Okay. So now I'll move on to questions received through the Google form. If anybody has any questions, or if you can still type in the chat box, and if you are joined by phone, maybe we can allow a couple of them later on. We can request you to unmute your phones and speak if you wish so. There was a question regarding the puja donations and puja dakshina that was reinstated by the VND. So what are the reasons for the reinstatement of the puja donations, and for what purposes the VND plans to use the puja donation money? And is along the similar lines, there is a second question also asking that if the purpose is covering the expenses, what are the purposes for covering the expenses of Guru Dakshina, and what is the intent and why this is being done, as we also have local yogis contributing towards different projects that are there.
Thank you. So thanks for this question. I'll take that one. So let us start very at the very beginning, as they say. So puja dakshinas have been a part of Sahaj. Shri Mataji herself was particular about it. And the reason why she was particular about it was because she said that while self-realization is free, you need to respect your own Nabhi Tattva. It is about your own self-esteem and your own self-respect that you have to respect. And to that end, a Guru Dakshina is the way to do it. And of course, spirituality, human spirituality, is replete with instances of what a Guru Dakshina is and the importance of Guru Dakshina. So fast forward then to the present in a way. So some years ago, we stopped taking the Guru Dakshina as a Dakshina because Shri Mataji's physical presence not being there. It was felt that it would be inappropriate to collect Dakshina because the Dakshina is only the right of a Guru to receive and for a devotee to or a disciple to give towards, which is of course absolutely right. Except that the notion of the physical absence of Shri Mataji does not imply that she is not with us. And that is not a difference without a distinction. So she is very much with us. So for those who feel that she is not with us is in itself a very, very spiritually dangerous ground to stand on. With that said, now to more practical matters, and that is when in the United States we stopped sort of collecting Guru Dakshina as far as the puja day itself was concerned. None of the other countries, and when I mean none, most other countries that we have had a chance to speak with before we sent out that request have not stopped collecting dakshina on the day of the puja. For example, Kabela, which is again very near and dear to all our hearts, managed by the World Foundation, longest stay of Shri Mataji since 1970 in any one particular geography outside of India, longest legacy of Shri Mataji's presence, a place we all love and revere and adore. They collect dakshina on the day of the puja itself. Now that dakshina cost is managed in terms of looking at the operational expenses of the puja, and then a fair amount of that money goes to the World Foundation, where it is used to run the foundation's many activities, particularly Palazzo Doria, which is Shri Mataji's house, Albera, the land where we have the puja, Dalio, so on and so forth. So the bottom line is that to begin with, this notion that we have suggested of puja dakshina is purely voluntary. Let me repeat that. It's purely voluntary. Those who do not wish to contribute are absolutely free not to contribute. That's the first part. So it is not mandatory, unlike in places like Kabela, if I might reinforce that. So it is completely voluntary. If we don't wish to contribute, do not contribute. That's perfectly fine. So the notion behind this is spiritual to begin with. We get a lot of questions as to why we are doing this, and that money is the only objective. Money is not the objective. Spirituality is the objective. Do I owe something to my guru on that day? Yes or no? That is the question. If I feel, then yes, I should try to do something, demonstrate my affection for her, my reverence for her. And that could be done by just bringing in some flowers, and that is fine too. So once again, for the third time on this call, it is purely voluntary. Now, having said that, are there any practical implications to this? Of course there are. You just saw the presentation by Meenakshi. After 30 years, The central VND fund has barely $68,000. Any organization that wishes to grow cannot just grow on goodwill and a pure desire. Although that helps, nowhere in the Sahaj universe, and including Sri Mataji's own demonstration of her activities, precluded the use of financial resources. So what the VND is proposing is that for such voluntary contributions that are collected across centers, we basically have uh, the a 70-30 split which is being suggested. So 70% of such collection. So for example, if $100 are collected on the day of the puja, $70 will come to the VND central fund, and $30 will remain with the local collective. The local collective will have discretionary ability to deploy those $30 or 30% of such collections. The 70%, and this is where everybody is justifiably concerned, that one cannot equate Sri Mataji with VND. Of course, one would have to be institutionalized in a psychiatric institution to have any such kind of notion that the VND or VND-like bodies anywhere in the world, and by the way, that includes organizations like the World Foundation in Kabela, to imagine that they would have the authority that Sri Mataji had. No, nobody believes in that. And I believe we are all a good group. We are all family members. We do trust each other. But then within that context, whatever is being gathered will be spent based on such presentations that you saw just now via Meenakshi. So we can all collectively decide where the puja contributions or puja based contributions, when they come to the central fund, where can they be deployed. And as you saw from Meenakshi's presentation, not only do we have say 60,000, but we are actually in the negative. We owe more money to the central fund within the central account than what is coming in. In fact, some of the centers around the United States have actually more money. But once again, it is not about the money. It is about, unless and until a VND-like body has some funding that is coming to it, then basically it becomes very, very challenging otherwise to do so. So like again, Chaitanya said, and he brought this up, and this is what the VND is also thinking next year, in centers that are relatively smaller, that do not have the resources of say a tri-state area center or a DC center, or say like Dallas, which are very big centers, they can fund for themselves. They can, next year, they can finance their own activities that they wish to perform. But what about the United States as a country? It's a huge country, and there are vast swaths of this land where Sahaj has not even been able to visit. And although we have extraordinary yogis who take day trips or take month-long trips sometimes, go on the road, try to have these programs, that is not sufficient, and that is not a sustainable way of doing it. So one of the ways we are thinking as a National Council is, can we provide some kind of micro funding to such centers where they can then conduct programs in the year of the Sahasrara? But all of this needs resources. So goodwill is important. A pure desire is critical, but then so are financial resources. So yes, while the basis of trying to reinstate it, the puja contributions, and we are refraining from using the word puja dakshina, because again we got some feedback on that, so we'll call it puja contributions. These voluntary puja contributions, if they are collected, they can only serve a greater purpose for the collective, because otherwise the VND is going to be very much hamstrung. Not just this VND, but any other VND. You saw what is happening with the Kanajawari School expansion project. Although we have monies, again, it gets hamstrung. But the other bigger question that I would like to take this opportunity to mention is that we need to think beyond our own pet projects. So when the notion started that I can donate to a project of my choice, Mataji never gave that choice. Again, VND is not equating itself with Sri Mataji, but then neither is say other national level bodies around the world. The VND is not the exception. the VND is the rule. And moving forward, if we continue to think in narrow terms as to this is my pet project, this is Kana Johari land, so I'll give money to it because I believe in it. This is the CJ school, I believe in it, therefore I'll give only to it. This is Mataji's house, I believe in it, so I will only give to Shri Mataji's house. That from a larger context is inappropriate because we are all one family, and the work of Sahaj is basically as envisioned by Shri Mataji. So I'm hoping that some of this is useful. For the final time, these are voluntary contributions. If you do not wish to contribute, that's perfectly fine. But not all of the 100% of dollars collected on the puja day are coming to the VND. Your local councils will have the opportunity to decide on how they want to spend about 30% of that money. And let me then take this opportunity to put a plug in for creating councils in such places where none exist. It becomes extremely challenging, and this is slightly deviant from the question, but it is relevant, that where we do not have local councils, it becomes very difficult for a national council to communicate with that collective. There is a notion that we don't need councils, we are functioning well without councils. That may be fine, but the formation of collective leadership, and these words are important, collective leadership as envisioned by Shri Mataji was put in place over 10 years ago. So it probably behooves us to follow the lead and the guidance provided by our divine guru to try to have in place such systems that are reflective of collective leadership. So it helps both at a spiritual level, which is the fundamental level, but also from an organizational perspective. Any national body such as the VND is hamstrung if it cannot communicate directly with a collective, because there is no representation. There is no collective council there. So again, in places where you do not have collective councils or local councils, the VND will certainly want to help you to get those in place. So I'll stop there, and back to you, Chaitanya. We have about a minute before we conclude.
Okay. There is a question regarding, and I think this was answered to, did Shri Mataji specifically direct that the school should be only in Kanajahari? Or was it was there a specific direction on the location of the school? Which Ashish Bhai, you probably alluded to that Shri Mataji did not have a specific direction that the school should be in one place or the other. The rest of the questions were also similar to this one, were kind of answered in the presentations, and if there are any suggestions, any further questions, you can always write to us at the National Council, which is USA-council@vnd.org. And please feel free to reach out to us anytime with any questions, any queries that you would have. We are kind of running out of time right now. And so again, we will share the recording, we will share the presentations, we will share all the information that was mentioned today to you, so that you can review it later on. Also, right now we only have 50 participants who have joined the call. Some must be joining in groups, but still kind of almost the 90% of the collective might not be represented on this call. So we will share the recording, and so that the rest of the collective is also informed about the VND's initiatives. Any final comments? Anybody wishes to say or convey, you can unmute and say them.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you once again for taking time, and we will try to have this every quarter. So far, at least on the chat, we are receiving pretty lots of positive responses, and we'll try to have these every quarter, as we said. So every 3 months have a presentation, and keep everybody sort of apprised. Mark, I have seen your question and the comment regarding the cost. Let me try to take a minute to maybe clarify, is that yes, the 3.4 million is not really what one might say is an overestimate, or is not that we are being that the VND is being asked to spend more money than what is required. The $3.4 million is very much within what it will cost to build a house in Kanajohari or build a structure in Kanajohari based on local regulations and cost of materials. The per square foot cost, etc., is exactly what it will cost us. So the 3.4 million is not an overestimate. The 3.4 million, however, does become an issue, and we are not hung up about the 3.4 million. It becomes an issue for an organization of our size. So let's say we wanted to build a structure on the land in upstate New York that would accommodate the number of students and teachers who should be housed there. Then that budget is an appropriate budget. It is not that is not an expensive budget. We're not trying to create a luxury structure there for the 3.4 million. And Mark, I hope that's precisely what we are trying to say probably. So to acknowledge that the 3.4 million is not something that we are being price gouged. That is not the point. All due diligence has been done in that regard. It's just that we don't have that kind of money on hand to be able to spend that kind of money. So I hope that answers. I believe, Mark, that is where you're probably trying to go. So once again, thank everybody's done. The school team has done its due diligence in that regard. So with that, and I'm only doing this, Mark, because otherwise unmuting you, talking, will take kind of more time. So hopefully that helps. So with that, thank you again. This was useful based on at least on the feedback that we have received. Be on standby for two things. One is the internet project update. That is one. We will keep talking to you. We'll reach out to some of you. The second thing is with regard to the Love America Tour desirability, as well as the Festival of Inner Peace. Please get back to your coordinators and let us know as a collective what is it that you wish to have. We need to certainly get back to the Love America Tour organizers, because they are from Europe. They would want to know. And the final thing is, of course, for 2020, as
what happened with the school?
Into Sahasrara Puja.
They are going to do it because it's 98
celebrations. So with that, thank you once again, and Jai Shri Mataji.
Jai Shri Mataji.
Jai Shri Mataji.